Jake Sullivan wiped the grease from his hands and looked out the small window of mining station. Helix 7. The black space around him was filled with floating rocks and distant stars. He had been alone on this station for 8 months now, and he liked it that way. No people meant no problems. No conversations meant no arguments. Just him and the machines that kept the automated mining systems running. The station was not big, but it had everything he needed. A small living area with a bed and kitchen. A workshop filled with tools and spare parts. A medical bay that he hoped he would never need to use. The mining robots did all the hard work outside, while Jake made sure they kept working properly. It was simple work for a man who used to fix military vehicles during the war. Jake walked to the main control room and checked the screens. Everything looked normal. The robots were still digging valuable metals from the asteroids. The ore was being processed and stored in the cargo holds. In 2 weeks, a transport ship would come to pick up the metals and bring him fresh supplies. Until then, he would continue his quiet routine of maintenance and repairs. He was eating his dinner when the alarms started screaming. The lights flashed red and the station shook violently. Jake dropped his food and ran to the control room. The screens showed something impossible. A huge alien warship was spinning out of control and heading straight for the station. Behind it came 3 smaller ships, firing bright energy weapons. Jake grabbed the emergency controls and tried to move the station out of the way, but it was too late. The alien ship crashed into the outer ring with a sound like thunder. The whole station shook and twisted. Emergency systems activated automatically and sealed off the damaged sections. The 3 pursuing ships flew past without stopping and disappeared into the darkness. Between the asteroids, smoke filled the corridors, and Jake put on an emergency breathing mask. He grabbed a portable scanner and a first aid kit, then made his way toward the damaged section. The alien ship had torn a huge hole in the outer ring, but the main station was still intact. Air was leaking out, but not too fast. He could fix this damage if he worked quickly. Jake found an airlock that led to the wrecked alien ship. The metal was still hot from the crash, and strange symbols covered the walls. The ship was much larger than it looked from outside. The corridors were built for creatures much taller than humans. Everything was made from dark metal that seemed to absorb light. He followed sparking cables and broken pipes until he heard a sound. Someone or something was alive in there. Jake turned a corner and found the source of the noise. An alien lay trapped under a heavy beam. It was clearly female, but unlike any creature Jake had ever seen. She was almost 7 feet tall, with gray skin that looked like metal. Her hair was white, and her eyes glowed yellow like fire. Blood covered her arms and legs. The alien saw Jake and tried to move, but the beam held her down. She said something in a harsh language that sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake could not understand the words, but he could see pain in her glowing eyes. She was badly hurt and would die soon without help. Jake knew this creature was his enemy. The war between humans and the Drachnary Empire had been going on for 2 years. These aliens had attacked human colonies and killed thousands of people. The smart thing would be to leave her here, to die, or even kill her himself. But Jake could not do it. He had been a soldier once, but he was an engineer first. Engineers fixed things. They did not leave broken things to get worse. He put down his tools and examined the beam that trapped the alien. It was heavy, but he could move it with the right leverage. Jake found a metal rod and used it to lift one end of the beam. The alien understood what he was doing and pulled herself free. She tried to stand, but fell down again. Her left leg was badly broken. Jake pointed to himself and said his name slowly. The alien looked confused, but then pointed to herself and made a sound that might have been her name. Jake thought it sounded like Zara. He pointed toward the medical bay and made gestures to show he wanted to help her. Zara studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Getting Zara to the medical bay was not easy. She was much heavier than a human and her broken leg made walking impossible. Jake had to support most of her weight as they moved through the corridors. She was strong enough to crush him easily, but she let him help her without fighting. The medical bay had equipment designed for humans, but Jake did his best to treat her wounds. He cleaned the cuts on her arms and legs, then used the bone scanner to look at her broken leg. The machine showed that the bone was cracked, but not completely broken. Jake carefully put a support brace around her leg and gave her medicine for the pain. Zara watched everything he did with suspicious eyes. She said something in her language and pointed at him. Jake wished he could understand what she was trying to tell him. He activated the station's translation computer and pointed the scanner at her. The machine had basic Draknari language files from military intelligence. After a few minutes, the computer began to translate her words. She was asking why he helped her instead of killing her. Jake thought about how to answer. Through the computer he told her that he could not watch anyone die, even an enemy. Zara looked surprised by this answer. She said something else and the computer translated it as a word that meant honor or respect. Jake checked the station's sensors and felt his stomach drop. 3 Draknari warships were approaching fast. They would arrive in less than 6 hours. Zara saw the fear on his face and asked what was wrong. When Jake showed her the sensor readings, she became very still. She explained that those ships were hunting her. She had been marked for death by her own people for refusing to follow orders that went against her warrior code. Now, Jake faced an impossible choice. He could turn Zara over to the approaching ships and hope they would spare him. Or he could help her escape and become a fugitive alongside an alien warrior who could kill him with her bare hands. Either way, his quiet, lonely life was over. Jake looked at Zara, who was waiting for his decision. Her yellow eyes held no fear, only acceptance of whatever fate awaited her. Something in that brave look made up his mind for him. Jake made his decision quickly. He would help Zara escape even if it meant becoming a fugitive. The approaching Draknari ships would kill them both anyway, so running was their only choice. Jake helped Zara back to her damaged ship to see what could be salvaged. Her leg was still weak, but the pain medicine helped her move around. The alien ship was in bad shape but not hopeless. The main engine was cracked, and several power systems had failed during the crash. Jake studied this strange technology while Zara explained how each system worked. The translation computer helped them communicate, but they also used hand gestures and drawings to share ideas. Jake was amazed by how advanced the Draknari technology was. Zara was equally impressed by his quick understanding of systems he had never seen before. They worked together to strip useful parts from the mining station. Jake removed power cells and computer chips, while Zara used her incredible strength to move heavy equipment. She could lift things that would normally require a crane. Even with her injured legs, she was stronger than any human Jake had ever met. But she was also careful and precise with her movements. This was clearly a warrior who had learned to control her power. While they worked, Zara told Jake more about herself through the translation computer. She belonged to an elite unit called the Bloodclaws. They were the best warriors in the Draknari Empire and took pride in their honor and skill. But recently the Empire had been taken over by a more brutal faction that cared nothing for honor. They wanted to destroy human colonies completely instead of just conquering them. Zara had refused to attack civilian targets during the last battle. She believed warriors should fight other warriors, not helpless people. Her commander Vex Thorn had ordered her execution for disobedience. She escaped during the confusion of battle, but now she was hunted by both humans and her own people. She had nowhere to go and no one to trust, except this strange human who had saved her life. Jake understood her situation better than she knew. He had also refused bad orders during his military service. That was why he chose to work alone on this remote station instead of staying with the military. Sometimes doing the right thing meant standing alone against everyone else. He told Zara about his own past and why he understood her choice to follow her conscience, instead of bad orders. They finished the repairs, just as the sensors detected the approaching Draknari ships. Jake and Zara climbed into her ship and started the engines. The repairs held together, and they lifted off from the damaged mining station. Jake felt sad to leave his quiet home, but there was no choice now. His old life was gone, and a new dangerous one was beginning. The chase started immediately. 3 fast Draknari warships detected them, leaving the station, and moved to intercept. Zara took the pilot controls, while Jake managed the weapons and sensors. She was an excellent pilot, who knew every trick for evading enemy fire. Jake quickly learned to predict what she needed, and adjusted the ship's systems to help her. Maneuvers. They raced through the asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover. The pursuing ships were faster, but less maneuverable in the tight spaces between asteroids. Zara flew the ship like it was part of her body, twisting and turning through gaps that seemed impossible. Jake watched the sensors and called out warnings about incoming missiles and energy blasts. The enemy ships started firing explosive rounds to break up the asteroids and remove their cover. Jake had an idea and started overloading their engine exhaust to create false heat signatures. The trick confused the enemy targeting systems and bought them time to reach the edge of the asteroid field. But now they were in open space with nowhere to hide. Zara pushed the engines to maximum power and headed for Saturn. The gas giant's rings would provide more cover, and the damaged ship might be able to hide among the ice particles. The pursuing ships were gaining ground and started hitting them with long-range weapons. The hull shook and several systems failed, but they kept flying. Jake rerouted power from non-essential systems to strengthen their shields. Zara was impressed by how quickly he learned to work with alien technology. She taught him basic words in her language, while he showed her human engineering principles. Despite the danger, they made a good team and began to trust each other completely. They reached Saturn's rings just as their main engine started to fail. The pursuing ships followed them into the ice, and rock particles firing continuously. Zara used the ring material to block enemy shots, while Jake tried to keep their damaged systems working. Pieces of ice crashed against their hull, and the ship groaned under the stress. One of the enemy ships made a mistake and flew too close to a large ice chunk. Jake fired their remaining missiles and caused an avalanche that crushed the pursuer. The other 2 ships became more careful, but kept following them through the rings. Zara found a gap in the ring system and dove toward Saturn's upper atmosphere. The enemy ships could not follow them into the thick gas without being crushed, but their own ship was also being damaged by the pressure. Jake managed to stabilize their flight path, and they escaped through another gap in the rings. The pursuing ships were waiting for them, but their weapons had been damaged by ice impacts, and they could not shoot accurately. Zara piloted them toward Titan, where humans had a research station. Jake was worried about bringing an enemy alien to a human base, but they had no choice. Their ship was falling apart and would not make it much further. Jake used the radio to contact Titan base and explain their situation. The response was not friendly. Commander Lisa Monroe ordered them to surrender immediately or be destroyed. Jake tried to explain that Zara was a defector who could provide valuable intelligence about Draknari military plans. The commander was suspicious but agreed to let them land under heavy guard. Jake and Zara looked at each other as they approached the landing pad. They had survived the chase, but now faced a new challenge. Titan base was built inside a large dome that protected it from the harsh moon environment. Armed soldiers surrounded their ship as they landed. Jake helped Zara walk down the landing ramp, while dozens of weapons pointed at them. Commander Monroe was a tough-looking woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She studied Zara carefully while medics treated their injuries. The commander separated Jake and Zara for questioning. Jake spent hours explaining how he met Zara and why he chose to help her escape. He told them about her refusal to attack civilians and how she was marked for death by her own people. The military officers were skeptical, but interested in any intelligence about Draknari capabilities. Zara was questioned by alien specialists, who knew her language better than the station's computers. She answered their questions honestly, and provided detailed information about Draknari, military organization and tactics. She also warned them about something that made everyone very worried. A massive invasion fleet was heading toward Earth, and would arrive within days. When Jake and Zara were reunited, they could see fear in the faces of the humans around them. Earth was not prepared for a full-scale invasion by the Draknari Empire. The information Zara provided might be the only thing that could help humanity survive the coming attack. Commander Monroe made a difficult decision, and agreed to work with the alien defector. Jake felt relief that they would not be executed or imprisoned, but he also knew their real challenges were just beginning. The invasion fleet would bring thousands of experienced Draknari warriors against Earth's smaller defense forces. Zara looked at Jake with her glowing yellow eyes, and he could see she was thinking the same thing. They had found safety for now, but the worst was yet to come. The days at Titan Base passed quickly, as Jake and Zara worked with human military planners to prepare for the invasion. Zara shared detailed maps of Draknari ship layouts and explained their battle tactics. She showed them weak points in their armor and weapons systems that human forces could exploit. Jake helped translate the technical information and suggested ways human technology could counter alien advantages. Commander Monroe was impressed by how much useful intelligence Zara provided, but she remained suspicious of the aliens' true motives. Other officers questioned whether this might be an elaborate trick to make humans trust false information. Zara understood their doubts and did not take offense. She knew that trust had to be earned, especially between former enemies. Jake spent most of his time with Zara, helping her communicate with the human strategists. He learned more of her language, while she picked up basic English words. They discovered they had similar ways of thinking about problems, and often came up with the same solutions independently. Jake found himself looking forward to their conversations, and feeling disappointed when military duties separated them. Zara told Jake more about her past during their quiet moments together. She had been raised from childhood to be a warrior in the Blood Claws unit. Fighting was the only life she had ever known, but she always believed in protecting the innocent. When her empire started targeting civilians, she felt torn between loyalty to her people and her personal code of honor. Meeting Jake had shown her that enemies could become allies if they shared the same values. Jake shared his own story about losing his parents during an earlier alien attack. He had joined the military to fight back, but became disillusioned when he saw too many commanders making decisions based on politics instead of protecting people. That was why he chose to work alone on the mining station. He never expected to find someone who understood his struggles until he met Zara. Their growing friendship was interrupted when Admiral Ryan Carter arrived from Earth to personally interview Zara. The Admiral was a hard man who had fought aliens for years and trusted none of them. He questioned Zara for hours, trying to find flaws in her story or catch her in lies. Zara answered every question honestly, but Jake could see the Admiral's hostility was hurting her. Admiral Carter finally declared that he believed Zara was telling the truth, but he still did not trust her completely. He ordered constant surveillance and restricted her access to sensitive areas of the base. Zara accepted these conditions without complaint, but Jake felt angry about how she was being treated. She had risked everything to help humanity and deserved better. The debate about Zara's trustworthiness became meaningless when long-range sensors detected an advanced Draknari strike force approaching Titan. A dozen fast attack ships were moving to destroy the base before the main invasion fleet arrived at Earth. Admiral Carter ordered all civilians evacuated, but there was not enough time. The attack would begin in less than 2 hours. Zara asked permission to help defend the base. Admiral Carter was reluctant to arm an alien, but Commander Monroe pointed out they needed every advantage they could get. The Draknari ships would be heavily armed, and the base's defenses might not be enough to stop them. Zara's knowledge of enemy tactics could make the difference between survival and destruction. Jake volunteered to work with Zara, coordinating the base's defensive systems. He knew the human technology, while she understood how the attackers would try to penetrate their defenses. Admiral Carter finally agreed and gave them access to the main defense control center. Jake and Zara had 1 hour to prepare before the enemy arrived. They worked frantically to reprogram the base's weapons, systems, and sensor arrays. Zara explained how Draknari ships would approach the target and where they would focus their attack. Jake modified the defensive protocols to counter these tactics and positioned their limited forces for maximum effectiveness. When the enemy ships appeared on sensors, they were as ready as possible. The battle began with long-range missile exchanges. The Draknari ships fired powerful plasma torpedoes that could punch through heavy armor. Jake used Zara's advice to time their defensive fire perfectly and destroyed several incoming missiles, but more kept coming, and some got through to damage the base's outer shields. Zara suggested they focus their counterattack on the enemy command ship to disrupt their coordination. Jake programmed their heaviest weapons to target that specific vessel, while Zara guided the targeting computers. Their combined efforts damaged the command ship and caused confusion among the other attackers, but the Draknari adapted quickly and changed their tactics. Several ships broke off from the main attack and tried to land assault troops on the base. Jake sealed off sections of the facility, while human soldiers prepared to repel boarders. Zara asked for weapons and armor so she could fight alongside the defenders. Admiral Carter was reluctant to give weapons to an alien, but Commander Monroe overruled him. She had seen how hard Zara worked to help them and believed they needed her combat skills. Zara was given human military gear that barely fit her larger frame, but she adapted quickly to the unfamiliar equipment. The first Draknari boarding parties broke through the outer hull in 3 locations. Jake watched the security monitors as alien warriors poured into the corridors. They were bigger and stronger than humans with advanced weapons and armor. The human defenders fought bravely but were being pushed back steadily. Zara joined the fighting in the main corridor where the heaviest attack was taking place. Jake watched in amazement as she moved through the battle like a force of nature. She knew exactly how Draknari warriors fought and used that knowledge against them. Her strength and speed were incredible, but her tactical intelligence was even more impressive. She disabled enemy weapons with precise strikes and used their own combat techniques against them. The human soldiers learned to follow her lead and work as a team. Together, they stopped the main assault and began pushing the invaders back toward their entry points. Jake coordinated defensive systems to support the ground fighting while monitoring the space battle outside. The combination of Jake's technical skills and Zara's combat expertise turned the tide of both battles. The base's weapons destroyed 2 more enemy ships, while the boarding parties were eliminated or captured. The remaining Draknari vessels retreated after losing more than half their force. Titan Base had survived, but barely. In the aftermath of the battle, Jake found Zara in the medical bay, getting treatment for several wounds. She had fought with incredible courage and saved many human lives. Even Admiral Carter admitted that her assistance had been crucial to their victory. The other soldiers treated her with new respect and gratitude. Jake sat beside Zara while the medics worked on her injuries. He realized how much she meant to him and how afraid he had been of losing her during the battle. She looked at him with her glowing eyes and seemed to understand what he was feeling. Something had changed between them during the fight. They were no longer just allies working together against a common enemy. Zara explained that, in Draknari, culture warriors who fought together in life or death situations formed bonds that went beyond friendship. She said there was a ceremony that could formalize such partnerships and make them even stronger. Jake asked what kind of ceremony she meant and felt his heart race when she described what humans would call a marriage ritual. The idea should have seemed impossible. He was human and she was alien. They had known each other for only a few weeks, but Jake realized that Zara understood him better than anyone ever had. She shared his values and his desire to protect others. When she asked if he would consider the warrior's marriage ceremony, he surprised himself by saying yes. Admiral Carter announced that the main Draknari invasion fleet had been detected approaching Earth. All available forces were being recalled to defend humanity's home world. Jake and Zara would travel with the fleet and continue providing intelligence support. But first Zara wanted to perform the marriage ceremony according to her people's traditions. Jake felt nervous but excited as Zara explained what the ritual involved. It was not just about love, but about two warriors pledging to protect each other and fight as one. They would share their scars and exchange weapons as symbols of their bond. Most importantly, they would swear oaths that could only be broken by death. Commander Monroe agreed to witness the ceremony and help Jake understand the cultural significance. Other base personnel gathered to watch this unprecedented union between human and alien. As Jake looked into Zara's fierce yellow eyes, he knew he was about to take the biggest risk of his life. But some risks were worth taking for the right person. The marriage ceremony took place in Titan Base's main assembly hall, the night before the fleet departed for Earth. Zara had spent hours explaining the Draknari traditions to Jake and helping him understand what each part of the ritual meant. Commander Monroe and Admiral Carter watched with curiosity, while the other personnel gathered around to witness this historic moment. Zara wore her battle armor polished to a bright shine. The metal plates were covered with symbols that told the story of her victories and honors. As a Bloodclaws warrior, Jake wore his best human military uniform with medals from his service as an engineer. He felt nervous but determined as Zara began speaking in her native language, with the translation computer converting her words. She explained that Draknari warriors believed strength came from unity. Two fighters who trusted each other completely could accomplish things that neither could achieve alone. The marriage ceremony was not just about love, but about creating a partnership that would make both warriors more effective in battle and in life. The first part of the ritual involved sharing scars. Zara showed Jake the marks on her arms and shoulders from various battles. Each scar had a story and represented a lesson learned through pain and struggle. Jake revealed his own scars from his military service and explained how he got each one. By sharing these marks, they were sharing their experiences and becoming part of each other's history. Next came the exchange of weapons. Zara gave Jake one of her curved fighting knives. The blade was made from alien metal that stayed sharp forever, and the handle was carved with her family symbols. Jake gave her his grandfather's service pistol, which had been passed down through 3 generations of soldiers. Each weapon represented the trust they placed in their partner. The most important part came when they spoke the warrior's vows. Zara placed her hand on Jake's shoulder and promised to protect him with her life. She swore to fight beside him against any enemy and to never abandon him in battle. Jake repeated similar words, feeling the weight of the promises he was making. These were not just words but sacred oaths that would bind them together. Commander Monroe stepped forward with rings made from salvaged metal from both their ships. She explained that humans also exchanged rings during marriage ceremonies as symbols of unbroken commitment. Zara was touched by this addition to her people's tradition and carefully placed the ring on Jake's finger. The cold metal felt strange, but meaningful as a sign of their union. When the ceremony ended, Jake felt different somehow. He looked at Zara and saw not just his alien partner, but his wife, according to both their cultures. The other humans congratulated them and wished them luck in the coming battle. Even Admiral Carter seemed moved by what he had witnessed and treated them both with new respect. Their happiness was short-lived because urgent messages arrived from Earth's defense forces. The main Draknari invasion fleet had been detected and was much larger than expected. Hundreds of warships were approaching with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Earth's defenders were outnumbered by more than 10 to 1, and desperately needed any advantage they could get. But the messages also contained disturbing intelligence about the invasion fleet's commander. Vexthorn was leading the attack personally aboard the massive flagship called Death's Edge. He was Zara's former commander, and the one who had ordered her execution for refusing to attack civilians. Worse yet, intercepted communications suggested that Zara's escape had been allowed to happen for a specific purpose. Admiral Carter called Jake and Zara to a private meeting to discuss this new information. Intelligence officers had decoded Draknari messages, indicating that Vexthorn planned to use Zara to infiltrate human defenses. Her escape and rescue by Jake might have been part of an elaborate plan to place a spy close to Earth's military. Commanders. Zara was shocked and angry when she heard this theory. She insisted that her defection was real, and that she had truly betrayed her empire to help humanity. But Jake could see doubt in her glowing eyes as she tried to remember details from her escape. Had Vexthorn really let her get away, knowing she would seek human help? Admiral Carter was ready to arrest Zara and treat her as an enemy spy, but Jake argued passionately in her defense. He had seen her fight alongside human soldiers and risk her life to protect Titan Base. No spy would have shown such genuine commitment to their supposed enemies. Commander Monroe supported Jake's position and convinced the Admiral to give Zara a chance to prove her loyalty. The test came sooner than expected when Vexthorn sent a personal message to Titan Base. The Draknari commander appeared on the main screen in his elaborate battle armor. His scarred face showed cold amusement as he addressed Zara directly in their native language. The translation computer converted his words for the humans to understand. Vexthorn told Zara that her performance had been acceptable so far, but now it was time to complete her real mission. She was to kill Jake and the other human leaders, then provide detailed intelligence about Earth's defenses to the invasion fleet. If she did this, she would be forgiven for her apparent betrayal and welcomed back into the Empire with full honors. He revealed that her escape had indeed been planned from the beginning. The sabotage to her ship and the pursuit by other vessels had all been carefully arranged to make her defection seem genuine. Vexthorn had counted on human compassion to make them trust a wounded enemy. Once Zara gained their confidence, she could strike at the perfect moment. The revelation hit Zara like a physical blow. Everything she thought she knew about her escape was a lie. She had been manipulated by her former commander and used as a weapon against innocent people. Jake watched her face go through anger, grief, and shame as she realized how completely she had been deceived. But then Zara did something that surprised everyone, including Vexthorn. She looked directly at the screen and spoke in clear English so all the humans could understand. She told her former commander that she rejected his orders and chose to stand with humanity against the invasion. Her defection was real now, even if it had not been originally. Vexthorn's amusement turned to rage as he realized his plan had failed. He threatened to torture and kill both Jake and Zara when the invasion fleet arrived. Zara responded by challenging him to single combat according to Draknari warrior law. If she won, he would have to withdraw the invasion fleet. If she lost, Jake and the other humans would be spared. The challenge put Vexthorn in a difficult position. Refusing would make him look weak in front of his warriors, but accepting meant risking his life against one of the best fighters in the Bloodclaws unit. Admiral Carter quickly spoke up and suggested a different approach. Instead of single combat, they would attempt to capture or destroy the flagship before the battle for Earth began. Jake volunteered for the mission, and Zara immediately said she would go with him. They knew the ship's layout and could work together to sabotage its command systems. Admiral Carter was reluctant to risk his best source of intelligence, but agreed the mission was their only hope of evening the odds. The plan was dangerous, and probably suicidal. They would have to infiltrate the most heavily defended ship in the Draknari fleet, then fight their way to the command center. Even if they succeeded in damaging the flagship, they might not survive to escape. Jake looked at Zara and saw his own determination reflected in her eyes. They spent the next day preparing for the mission and saying goodbye to their friends at Titan Base. Commander Monroe wished them luck and made them promise to come back alive. Admiral Carter gave them the best equipment available and detailed intelligence about the flagship's defenses. As their small stealth ship approached the invasion fleet, Jake felt fear and excitement in equal measure. This mission would either save Earth or get them both killed. He looked at Zara sitting beside him and remembered their marriage vows. They had promised to fight together against any enemy. Now they would face the ultimate test of that promise. The flagship Death's Edge loomed ahead of them like a floating city made of dark metal. Hundreds of weapon ports dotted its hull, and fighter ships swarmed around it like angry insects. Jake and Zara checked their equipment one final time, then began their approach to the docking bay. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Jake piloted their small stealth ship into the flagship's docking bay, using fake identification codes that Zara had provided. The massive hangar was filled with Draknari fighters and transport ships, preparing for the assault on Earth. Hundreds of alien warriors moved around, checking weapons and loading supplies. Jake and Zara wore stolen Draknari uniforms that barely fit, but would hopefully let them blend in with the crowd. They made their way through the ship's corridors using Zara's knowledge of the layout to avoid heavily guarded areas. The flagship was enormous, with thousands of crew members and multiple command centers. Their target was the main bridge, where Vexthorn would be coordinating the invasion. If they could plant explosives in the right locations, they could cripple the ship's ability to control the fleet. Zara led them through maintenance tunnels and service passages that she remembered from her time serving on similar vessels. Jake carried the explosive devices while Zara watched for patrols and security systems. They moved carefully, but quickly, knowing that every minute brought the invasion fleet closer to Earth. The first checkpoint nearly exposed them when a guard questioned Zara about her unfamiliar companion. She explained that Jake was a captured human engineer being brought to the bridge for interrogation. The guard was suspicious, but accepted her story when she showed forged transfer orders. Jake played his part by looking defeated and avoiding eye contact. They reached the first target location, which was the main computer core that controlled ship communications. Jake quickly planted an explosive device, while Zara kept watch. The bomb was designed to overload the computer systems and create a chain reaction that would spread throughout the ship, but they needed to place several more devices before activating them all at once. The second target was more dangerous because it was closer to the bridge and heavily guarded. Jake had to crawl through an air vent while Zara created a distraction by starting an argument with some guards about duty assignments. Her acting was perfect as she played the role of an arrogant warrior complaining about inferior postings. Jake planted the second device in the ship's main power distribution center, then rejoined Zara, who was still arguing with the confused guards. They moved on to their final target, which was the weapon control system that coordinated the flagship's massive guns. This location was the most heavily defended because it was critical to the ship's combat effectiveness. They were almost at the weapon control center when alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Security forces started searching every corridor and checking identification more carefully. Jake and Zara had to hide in a storage room while armed patrols rushed past their hiding place. Something had gone wrong, but they were not sure what. Zara used her warrior training to overpower a lone guard and steal his communication device. She listened to the reports and learned that their stealth ship had been discovered in the docking bay. The entire crew was now on alert, looking for human infiltrators. Their mission had become much more dangerous, but they were too close to the target to retreat now. They fought their way to the weapon control center using Zara's combat skills and Jake's knowledge of the ship's technical systems. Zara disabled guards with precise strikes, while Jake used his engineering expertise to create shortcuts through maintenance areas. They worked together like a perfectly coordinated team, each knowing exactly what the other would do. The weapon control center was protected by automated defenses and multiple guard posts. Jake used his explosives to disable the security systems, while Zara engaged the guards in close combat. Her strength and speed were incredible as she fought through enemies who had trained their entire lives for war. But she was outnumbered and starting to take serious damage. Jake finished planting the final explosive device, then joined the fight with his sidearm and the drachnary knife Zara had given him during their marriage ceremony. He was not trained for this kind of combat, but desperation and determination made him effective. Together they cleared the control center and prepared to activate their explosives. But before they could complete their mission, Vexthorn appeared, with a squad of elite guards. The drachnary commander was even more imposing, in person, with battle scars covering his face and arms. He spoke to Zara in their native language, calling her a traitor, and promising to make her death painful and slow. Zara challenged him to the single combat she had demanded earlier, but Vexthorn laughed and ordered his guards to kill both of them. The elite warriors advanced with weapons drawn, but Jake activated the explosive devices early to create chaos. The blasts shook the entire ship and caused power failures throughout multiple sections. In the confusion, Jake and Zara fought their way toward the escape pods, but found their path blocked by more enemy forces. The ship was breaking apart around them as secondary explosions spread through the damaged systems. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices warned of hull breaches and system failures. Thorn pursued them, personally determined to kill the traitors who had sabotaged his flagship. He was skilled enough to fight both Jake and Zara at the same time, using advanced weapons and superior training. But his anger made him careless, and Zara used that weakness against him. She fainted. Left then struck right with the human pistol Jake had given her during their wedding ceremony. The shot caught Vexthorn in the shoulder and spun him around. Jake followed up with the drachnary knife cutting through the commander's armor to wound his sword arm. Together they had defeated one of the Empire's greatest warriors. But there was no time to celebrate, because the flagship was falling apart around them. Jake and Zara reached an escape pod just as the main structure began breaking up. They launched into space and watched the massive warship tear itself apart in a series of brilliant explosions. The destruction of the command vessel threw the entire invasion fleet into confusion. Their escape pod was picked up by Earth Defense Forces, who had been waiting for their signal. Admiral Carter personally welcomed them back and congratulated them on their successful mission. The loss of the flagship had disrupted drachnary coordination and given humanity a fighting chance in the coming battle. Jake and Zara piloted a modified fighter during the final space battle that decided Earth's fate. Jake handled the technical systems while Zara served as gunner, using her knowledge of enemy tactics to devastating effect. Their partnership was perfect as they destroyed enemy ships and helped coordinate the human defense. The battle was fierce, but shorter than expected. Without Vexthorn's leadership, the drachnary fleet lost cohesion and began fighting as individual ships instead of a coordinated force. Many alien warriors surrendered or defected when they realized their cause was hopeless. The invasion was defeated, but at great cost to both sides. Jake was badly wounded when their fighter was shot down during the final phase of the battle. Zara carried him to safety, just as he had once helped her when she was injured. She tended his wounds with the same care he had shown her in that first meeting on the mining station. Their roles had reversed, but their bond remained strong. In the aftermath, Earth's government granted Zara citizenship and full legal recognition of her marriage to Jake. She became a liaison between human forces and the growing number of drachnari defectors who opposed their empire's aggressive expansion. Her warrior skills and inside knowledge made her invaluable in helping former enemies become allies. Jake recovered from his injuries and they decided to settle on a frontier colony world, where his engineering skills and her combat training would be useful. The colony needed people who could build infrastructure while defending against the various dangers of an unexplored planet. It was perfect work for a couple who specialized in solving problems together. 6 months later, Jake stood in the workshop he had built for repairing colony equipment. Through the window he could see Zara training a group of human and Drachnary volunteers in defensive tactics. She had adapted well to her new role as a teacher and protector of civilians, rather than a warrior serving an empire. Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that day when an alien warship crashed into his lonely mining station. He had gone from a man who avoided all human contact to someone married to an alien warrior from another world. The transformation seemed impossible, but it felt completely natural. Zara finished her training session and joined Jake in the workshop. She was learning human engineering principles while he continued studying Drachnary combat techniques. They were preparing for whatever challenges the frontier would bring, but now they faced them as true partners. As they worked together in the evening light of their new world, Jake realized that sometimes the best thing that could happen to someone who had always been alone was finding the right person to stand beside them. It did not matter if that person was human or alien. What mattered was finding someone who shared your values and would fight alongside you against whatever the universe could throw at you. Jake looked at Zara as she carefully assembled a piece of human technology using techniques he had taught her. Her yellow eyes glowed with concentration, and her strong hands moved with surprising gentleness. This fearless alien warrior had become his wife, his partner, and his best friend. They had started as enemies thrown together by chance and survived to become something stronger than either could have been alone. Their love had grown out of mutual respect and shared struggles. Together they had helped save 2 worlds and countless lives. Now they were building a new life on a frontier world, where humans and aliens could work together in peace. It was not easy work, but it was meaningful. Every day brought new challenges that required both his technical skills and her warrior training. Every day proved that their partnership made them both better than they had been apart. Jake smiled as he watched Zara successfully complete the assembly she had been working on. She looked up at him with pride and satisfaction at mastering another human skill. He felt the same pride in learning the Drachnary fighting techniques she taught him. They were becoming something new together, while staying true to who they had always been. The future was uncertain, but Jake faced it without fear. He had found his place in the universe standing beside a warrior who would never abandon him. Together they could handle whatever came next.